I'm going to be honest with you. I prepared, as I started to prepare this one, you know how I like to give you the context, the historical context, what's going on. It makes things make so much more sense. And the more I got into the historical context to prepare for this thing, like, man, it's quite a story. I was like, that's a great lesson in itself. And then I'm like, so it was half the lesson. And I'm like, okay, now to the story. And the story is so good, I thought both together might almost, especially if I did the background first, it would be way too much information. But, because it's like we're going down following this neat little rabbit trail, and then we come back and it's like a completely different story, just what happened in the chapter. And then I looked over the chapter, and I thought, really what I'm going to do, the chapter is not bad by itself, standalone. It's just this history does help add some stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to get through the chapter as quickly as I can. And if there's time, at the end, as icing on the cake or as extra candy, I'll give you some of the historical context that goes with it. And you'll go like, oh, that's like, it'll be easier to make all those connections and it won't seem like drinking from a fire hose. If we don't get there, you won't know what you're missing. Till next week. So let me give you a few thoughts on this. So remember, we're talking about, we're following the line of the history of Israel. They just finished the time of the judges. They wanted a king. And why did they want a king? Well, see, isn't that a loaded question? Because when I say, why did they, I hear their excuses for wanting one. Why did they say they want one? Well, to be like everybody else, to have somebody protect them. But what was the real reason they wanted? Because they had rejected God as king. All right, so let's not forget that. And so God then picks a king for them. Does he pick the king he would have chosen by what he wanted? No, he actually gives them what they want. Often God will give us what we want so that we will learn by ourselves the hard way we didn't really want it. Or we thought we wanted it, but it doesn't do. Have you ever heard the term buyer's remorse? Has anybody ever felt that? Buyer's remorse. You want it, you buy it, and then you go, why did I pay this for that? Felt good in the moment. Sometimes God lets us go through that. It's that dream car, that dream boat, the dream tool set, that dream cookware, or the dream computer, the dream whatever. And then when you get it, I was living for this, to be able to have this, and I'm really not much better off than I was before. I prefer those things when I didn't pursue them, but God gave them to me. Because then it's like, ooh, that's a gift from God to make this life easier. Nothing wrong with a nice car or a nice house or a nice cookware or a nice, all the other things I mentioned, the cool lawn mower, the zero turn, whatever you want, if it was a gift from the Lord and not me going outside of God's will to have it. There's a big difference. Did God ever want them to have a king? Yes. How do we know this? Gave them rules back in the law about kingship. That's kind of a way of saying you're going to have one, but in his timing, in his way. And they were like, no. We want to do it our way. And in a few minutes, if we get to that part, I'm going to show you one of the reasons I think they may have felt that way and why they wanted a king. But instead, God chose what they wanted based on what they wanted so that they couldn't say, well, we wanted a king, but not one like that. You see, because that would have completely destroyed the illustration. So it's like, all right, you want a king. I'm going to give you the kind of king you think you're looking for. And that's what he does. And that's where we're at in the story. Some lessons that we're going to learn as we look at Saul over the next few weeks is Saul is actually, in this chapter, going to do some good things. We're going to say, he's headed the right direction. When his first battle comes up, and he doesn't say, well, okay, I'll try. He says, this is how it needs to be done, and you should follow me and Samuel. When he says, follow me and Samuel, what's he saying? I mean, what's Samuel known for? Being a man of God. And at the end, he says, the Lord gave us this victory. And so we're gonna see him doing some things right. But he doesn't end well. In fact, he ends extremely poorly. And often, and I would say most often, in the Christian life, it is less about how you started and more about how you finish. We all come from different starting points. We all know a little bit different amounts at the beginning. You can only respond based on what you know. And God will take you from anywhere and start working with you. But if you start well and end bad, that means you had the truth and turned your back on it. You see the difference? And so this is really bad for Saul because he started well, but he didn't end well. And it is going to be an encouragement to all of us, whether we have done well or not in the past. If we have done well, we just got to step forward. Let's keep going well. And like Paul, let's finish the race strong. If you haven't done well, then you can say, I haven't done well, but it's only up from here. And God will honor whatever time you have left. And I really believe that from a couple weeks ago at church, I talked about when we were talking about the better resurrection, and we went to the story of the workers in the field that came at different times of the day. That some people use that because at the end of the day, when God paid everybody, he paid them the same thing. And so people will take that illustration and say, therefore, when we get to heaven, it's all the same. But that parable is bookended both at the beginning and the end by saying, therefore, the last will be first and the first will be last, which tells you there is an order. There's a first and a last, yes or no? And so somehow what happens in that parable has to fit that there's a first and a last. And I think it comes to this, is it's not so much how much work you did over the time you were there, but when you finished, were you finishing strong? And I think there are workers that are going to finish at different levels. And if you only have a little bit of time left, but you give absolutely everything to God in that time, you will be honored as someone who was able to do that, who did it for longer. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a little deep and it's a little bit off the direct from 1 Samuel 11, but this is all in getting us prepared to look at this chapter. So now Saul has been chosen king. We ended chapter 10 by Saul going to his hometown in Gibeah. It's 10:26. And some valiant men that God had touched had gone with him to protect him. There were scoundrels, and remember, there's a lot more to that word than what meets the eye, who said, how can this fellow save us? And they despised him and brought him no gifts, but Paul kept silent. That's going to come up again in this chapter. Listen, if I say Paul, just hear me as Saul. I have taught so much from the New Testament that Saul, who became Paul, I often see Saul and I say Paul. This is not the same Saul, and I know better. I know but sometimes I'm thinking 20 steps ahead and I will say it without even recognizing it. Catch me every time. If I say Paul, say Saul, so nobody gets confused, but just prepare. I've been doing it 100 times as I talk to my family about it. All right, so forgive me for it, but take me as I am. Yeah, how many times have I had to say, listen to what I mean, not what I say? Yeah. All right, here we go. You ready to get into it now? All right, let's see. Let's do the first 2 verses and then talk about it. Nahash, the Ammonite, went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. And all the men of Jabesh said to him, make a treaty with us, and we will be subject to you. But Nahash the Ammonite, you ready for this? Replied, I will make a treaty with you only on the condition that I gouge out the right eye of every one of you, and so bring disgrace on all Israel. Well, how do you like the way this is starting out? Haven't heard too many sermons on a Sunday morning about this, have we? And so here's what's happening. I mean, think about this position that they're in. They're bigger than the Israelites that are there. We'll get to Jabesh Gilead. They got a much bigger army, and Israel is still not very united. They just got a king, but we're going to find out in a moment what the king is doing, and it's not what most kings would be doing at this time. And so they haven't learned how to be a nation yet. And this country, the Ammonites come against them, and they're going to destroy them. And they said, please don't kill us. We'd rather be enslaved to you. Okay, we'll enslave you, but to make sure that you never come after us, you never revolt, every one of you. And it doesn't say just the men. It says all of you. I don't know what but there's all of you, you're going to gouge your right eye out. And I'll bet they weren't going to be nice about it, because it wasn't like, we're sorry, but we need to implement this safety measure. It wasn't like that. It was not only we'll be protected and we'll know you'll never be able to challenge us, but we're doing it to disgrace you. We want you to feel down here. You understand? Go ahead, Gila.
It was also because a lot of them, that's how they would draw a bow and arrow. They would use their eye to hit the target.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the first thing that we all see about that is, why the right eye? Most of them are right-handed. So when they shoot with a bow and arrow, they got to look down there. And if you got to look out of the eye, you're sticking your head out from behind protection further, and that's what I'm saying. And to fight with a sword, they're guarding like this, they look like this. Well, if they have to stick their head way out here to get the left eye to see, and they don't have good direction, you take out the right eye, what kind of warriors are they going to be? No, they won't make good warriors, but they'll make good slaves. Because they'll see enough to run that line of dirt when they're plowing, but they're not going to be able to hit you with something. You understand what I'm saying? So that is the point, why they take out the eye. But there's more to it than that. It's so that they are disgraced. It's so that they just feel it in their bones how hated they are. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Some of you may have, if you've got any kind of a study Bible, or, Kyle, you got the same Bible as me, don't you? Yeah. There's a note down there. A lot of times the notes will give you if something is in a different text, like the Masoretic text or Textus Receptus, if there's a verse that's in one and not in the other. And what's interesting is this. There's an added part to the story, and I did some research on this so that I could be kind of clear with y'all. It's not in the King James, it's not in the NIV. That's because it's not in those two main text, the Textus Receptus or the Masoretic text. But it is a story that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in the writings of Josephus. Do you know who Josephus is? He's one of the most well-known historians of that day, and he's known to be extremely accurate. So are there accurate things of history not put in the Bible? Yeah. But are we as sure of them as things that are in the Bible? No. If it's in the Bible, 100% guaranteed. That's inspired by God to be accurate. Sometimes things that we see and learn, and it has good historical evidence, can help us understand the situation. And I really went back and forth on this one because y'all got to think with me for a minute here, just where I'm coming from. I do believe that this information helps us, but then I have to ask this question to myself. Is if it was important to understand the point of the scripture, God would have put it there. Does that make sense? So if it's not there, if it helps me to understand the scripture, that's okay, as long as I don't miss the point that was there and why maybe he didn't give us the other information. Is that too deep? Y'all understand what I'm saying? So I'm gonna tell you what else was written as historical. Most likely it happened, but I'm not dogmatic. Does that make sense? So what I'm about to read to you is not from the Bible, but it's from pretty reliable historical sources. So don't take it as gospel, take it as, could be, okay? And chapter 11 starts out like this. According to a couple of these writings, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls and Josephus. Now Nahash, king of the Ammonites, oppressed the Gadites and Reubenites severely. I'll show you why those two are important in a moment. He gouged out all the right eyes and struck terror and dread in Israel. Not a man remained among the Israelites beyond the Jordan, I'll explain that again in a moment too, whose right eye was not gouged out by Nahash, king of the Ammonites. So what this is saying is east of the Jordan River, now I'll make that more clear in a moment, but east of the Jordan River where the Gadites and Reubenites and half of Manasseh tribe east was over here along this side of the Jordan on this side, that he had already gone through, and there wasn't a man on that side of the Jordan with his right eye in it, because it had already been plucked out, that whole side, except, it goes on, that 7,000 men fled from the Ammonites and entered Jabesh Gilead. About 6 months later, Nahash, and then it starts with what we have in our verse 1. Nahash, the Ammonite, went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. So if this is true, and Josephus concurs with the Dead Sea Scrolls, then what happened is this: Nahash had already covered the whole. So you see here we've got Reuben and Gad, and right about here is Jabesh Gilead, right about here. And then you've got part of Manasseh is up here. And then there's other Manasseh over here, and the rest of the tribes are all on the west side. And so what happened is, according to history, Nahash had already gone all through here and had poked the right eye out of all of them. 7,000 of them fled to Jabesh Gilead. Nahash gave him 6 months and then surrounded that city and said, I'm going to kill you for running. Now, how hopeless do you think they felt? Now, even if none of that is accurate, let's say that history outside the Bible wasn't true. It's not going to change our story, because what Saul does and everything's going to be the same. But the reason I go ahead and bring it up is it does give me a little insight as to maybe why they wanted a king so bad. Is it possible that they had these battles going on and God was not protecting them? And so they said, we need somebody to protect us because God's not doing it. Now, what are you thinking right now? Talk to me. When I say that, what's the first thought that goes through your mind? Yeah. First of all, how can you say God wouldn't protect his people? He let the Philistines do it. He let the Ammonites do it. He let the Moabites do it. Every time God let the enemy defeat Israel, why did he do it?
They turned to other gods.
Because they were turning to other gods. They're worshiping the Baal. So if I'm right, and if Josephus is right, what happened was they didn't want to give up their other gods, and because of that, God was not coming to their rescue, and they said, we have a choice. We can repent and let God be our king, or we reject him as our king and get our own king who will let us worship the gods we want to. You follow me? It kind of makes some of this make more sense, but it also puts, it really shows how fearful they would be at this time if this has happened to everybody else on that east side of the bank. What are the odds it's going to happen to them too? Yeah. So you understand the fear. Yeah. I'm almost went into the history. And that if we get to the end, if not, we'll do it next week. So let me keep moving here. Where did I leave off? Did I read verse 2 already? Yep, verse 3. The elders of Jabesh said to him, give us 7 days so we can send messengers throughout Israel. If no one comes to rescue us, we will surrender to you. Does that all seem funny to you? I mean, here they've got them surrounded, dead to rights. And they say, okay, we might surrender and let you take out our eyes, but will you let us first go see if we can get an army of people to come and defeat you? What enemy would say, yeah, go ahead? And that's a question, not rhetorical. What enemy would do that? Mm-hmm. One who is supremely confident, one who says, yeah, go get whoever you want. We've already defeated everybody. You want to bring them from the other side of the river? Bring them on over here. We'll take their eyes too.
Then they'll be weaker when we cross the river to conquer them.
You want to bring some over now? Go get them. All right, so that's the situation. Verse 3, the elders of Jabesh, I already said that. Verse 4, when the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and reported these terms to the people, they all wept aloud. Just then, Saul was returning from the fields behind his oxen. Let me read that again with my own additions, but keeping true to the text. Just then, King Saul was returning from the fields, pushing his own oxen. Y'all have a problem with that? How many kings are out there behind their own oxen, plowing their own fields? That's not very kingly, is it? Like, he can't get somebody else to do that? Is he not supposed to be like organizing all the stuff coming into him as king? What does that tell you about Israel's plan for having a king? What plan? They didn't have one. Go ahead, Gila.
Where was this field that Saul was coming from if the city was besieged?
Yeah, he's in Gibeah. All right, so good question.
Because it says in verse 10:26, it says,
Oh,
come and give, but it said Jabesh Gibeah before, too.
Jabesh Gilead. Gilead and Gibeah, two different things.
Oh, okay.
All right, so look here. You see Gibeah is right there?
Yeah.
That's about where, and because Benjamin, remember Saul is a Benjamite? So they're over here, and Jabesh Gilead is up in here. So going back, so it's going to be, it's not on this map, but it'd be somewhere up in here. And so everybody on this side of the map has already had their problem probably from Nahash. All right, so they send somebody over to Gibeah and say, we've got a problem across the river. And that brings in a problem, doesn't it? You got an army, what do you got to do? You got to cross the river. And again, that's more of the history probably next week when I'm looking at the clock. I hope you all come back next week. So what I see in verses 3 to 5 is what I titled this, Saul in the flesh. What is the man Saul doing? Yeah, what he'd been doing his whole life. He's got valiant men guarding him as he goes out and plows his field. What kind of leadership is he doing for the nation? Zero. And then verse 6, things change. And I would say this, he didn't know how to be king. He didn't know how to prepare to be king. If he had just started telling people, well, start bringing me stuff and I'm going to build a palace, not sure too many of them would have listened. We already know that there was a good-sized group that said, we're not doing it. And nothing happened to them, and so there was no fear of not doing it. Let me ask you this before we go any further. Have you ever felt unprepared for something you think God wants you to do? This is good news. Because I honestly think that Saul was doing pretty much the right thing. He didn't know what to do, so he kept doing what he knew to do until God told him differently. There are times that God will even give you an idea down the road, this is what I want from you. And that's good. But if you jump to that before you're ready or before he's ready for you, it can be bad. So here's what's happening. He doesn't know what to do, so he just keeps doing what he knows he's supposed to do until God does something. Verse 6. This is in contrast to the natural, fleshly Paul, and we're going to look at the spiritual Paul here in a moment. Verse 6, Saul. Thank you. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. We're going to see the same Saul. We're going to see the same Saul in verse 6 that we saw in verse 5? No, why not? Because the Spirit of the Lord came on him. All right, let's do some quick observations about that verse. What questions come to your mind when you see that the Spirit of the Lord came on Saul? All right, let me help you. Let me ask you a question. Didn't the Spirit of the Lord already come on Saul? When he on his way home from Samuel, and he prophesied. What does that tell you in the Old Testament about the Spirit coming on people? If he came on him and he prophesied, and then later he came on him again, and we'll see what happens here in a moment. What's that tell you? Comes and goes. How is that different than what happens in the New Testament? Was that Kyle? He's here to stay. What's the difference? It's the filling versus the indwelling. He comes to live in me now. He would come on people in the Old Testament temporarily in order to accomplish big things. I believe we are capable of big things because he lives in us, much bigger than we realize, and we don't attempt things because we don't understand that. But in the Old Testament, he would come on temporarily. Here's one that would really throw a lot of people. When the Spirit of God came on Saul, what was the first thing? What was the first evidence that the Spirit of God was in Saul this time? He what? He got angry. Who made him angry? The Spirit of God. Wait, no, I thought anger was always a sin.
It says be angry and sin.
Be angry and sin not. Is there ever a time to be angry? Yes, but appropriately handled. And it's almost, I could almost never, maybe never, that anger is right when you're mad at what's happening to you. It should be about what's happening to God and his will and his people. All right, verse 7. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and he sent the pieces by messengers throughout Israel, proclaiming, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel." Somebody help me. What's that about? First of all, he's finally taking some leadership, saying if you don't obey your king, there's consequences. First time. What else? This is so, I want you to place yourself in whatever 2000 BC, whatever the date of this is. Does it say up there? About 1200 BC, somewhere in there. Go ahead, Gila.
He had just come in from the field with his own oxen.
All right, let's pause. Go ahead.
And he's given up that role. And stepping in, not just stepping into the role of king, but he's stepping away from the other.
All right, so Saul is stepping away from his own plow to go do this. If Saul was coming in with a plow, what does that tell you about the time of year this was probably happening? Yeah, when everybody's doing what? When everybody's planting and plowing. What do they need to plow? Oxen. He cuts up his own oxen and says, if you don't come and help us, I'm taking your oxen. What's that mean to them? It's their livelihood. That's exactly right. You see the threat? You want to finish that field on your own? Then go ahead and keep plowing. Because if you keep going the way you're going, I'm coming in and taking your oxen away from you, and you'll be plowing by hand. I think we can take a day to do whatever the king wants. Like, you see what's happening? You see the threat? It's so well timed. There's an understanding of the culture and society and what they need. And I think he's headed in the right direction. Where did he get the wisdom to do that? The Spirit of God came on him and is telling him what to do. But I would say that even that, may not have been enough for these selfish Israelites, because it doesn't simply say, and they all said, yes, O king, we'll do it. Their acceptance of Saul doesn't come until later, but notice specifically what it says. It says, then the terror of the Lord fell on the people. The terror of Saul? The terror of having to plow by hand? God added terror to them so they would obey. So we see God doing two things so far, making one person mad and scaring the others. Is this a God that a lot of churches talk about today? But if you were here on Sunday and you listen to the sermon on Hebrews chapter 12, you will realize this anger is protective and this fear is love. Because they wouldn't have obeyed without it. And so he gives them enough fear that they obey, so that now that they've obeyed, he can give them the victory, and they should learn a lesson. Hey, next time, maybe we should obey God without the fear. You see what God is doing?
Made sure they kept their right eyes.
Yes. And in the end, he's letting them keep their right eye because he wants them not only to have both eyes like he created us, but some of them are going to go to battle for him later. Verse 8. When Saul mustered them at Bezek, the men of Israel numbered 300,000 and those of Judah 30,000. I'll make sure I'm not forgetting something that I wanted to say. All right, so basically, 330,000 men have come out to go to help, and I think they're all, hey, let's do this, let's do it quickly, let's get back to plowing. Okay, so they come together. Verse 9. They told the messengers who had come, say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, by the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be rescued. Now, how many times has Nahash had his way on that side of the river? Nobody came to help. And they were terrified. They were hopeless. They went to Nahash and said, we'll submit to you. I mean, they gave up. We already lost. You won. Let's just work out the terms of your victory. And the terms were, fine, you lose, but you also lose your right eye. Is there any way around that? No. Well, give us a little time to think about this. Hopeless. But now they got a king who says, we're going to come in to defend you. And they get the message, we're coming and you will be rescued. Can you imagine the hope that would feel to them? In a very small way. I think they would say large, but I say small. Did they have the victory yet? But with 330,000 people coming, what are the odds? Pretty good. So now they know the victory's coming. They don't have it yet, but they believe it. Isn't that a little taste of how it is with us in heaven? I'm not there yet. But I feel the comfort. I believe it. And so in a small way, it's kind of like that. So when the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. They said to the Ammonites, tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever you like. Well, by then it's going to be too late, but they don't know that. They're like, okay, we will go home and either sharpen our knives or, get our thumbs ready. However they went to pluck out the eyes of people. I don't know. I don't know how they did it, but they were going to get ready for it. Where did I leave off? 10. Nope. Verse 11. The next day, Saul separated his men into 3 divisions during the last watch of the night. They broke into the camp of the Ammonites and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. So from literally as it's dark, they're sleeping, 3 groups sneak up into the camp. They go into the camp and they start killing all the enemy. And they do that from morning, when it's dark, until the heat of the day, which is usually 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a long battle. And those who survived were scattered so that no 2 of them were left together. If you escaped by yourself, alone. Not having a commander, not knowing where to go, not having a king. And I'll bet there weren't that many. All right, so that's the victory that Saul is given. Now watch what happens, verse 12. Saul, bless his heart, gives credit to God. The people then said to Samuel, no, who they go to? What did King Saul say? Oh, by the way, I meant to mention this way up here. Is it verse 6? No. When he told him, when Paul saw, where it mentions Samuel up there. Is it verse 7? Yeah, he took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent the pieces by messengers throughout Israel, proclaiming, this is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul. What else does it say? And Samuel. Y'all see something funny about that? How many kings say, my word goes out, listen to me, and Samuel? Why is he name dropping? Samuel's name had weight.
I was going to say, people respected.
Respected Samuel for what specifically? Man of God, but more specifically.
Whatever he says is going to come true because God is.
His words never fell to the ground, right? His words always came true. So when Saul says, hey, this is what's going to happen to you, says me and Samuel, the guy whose words never fall to the ground. Yes, sir.
Now, just a few days ago, Saul didn't know who Samuel was.
I know, well, a few days ago to us, I think there's been a little bit of time here, but you're right. He didn't know who Samuel was. He met Samuel when Samuel says, you're the next king. What? But he's learning, and he learned from his servant who Samuel was, that everything he says comes true. So he uses that. So now in verse 12, you would think that the people would go to Saul and say, we're here to defend you against those people that were not in favor of you, but they don't. Who do they go to? Samuel. They still recognize him as a leader. They also recognize him as both an ear and the voice between them and Saul. Huh? No, I wish they would, but I think between them and Saul. Because Saul said, he's with me, you need to listen to me because you need to listen to him, right? And now, you'll see how this relates to Saul. They go to Samuel in verse 12 and say, who was it that asked, shall Saul reign over us? Turn these men over to us so that we may put them to death. Man, their whole society is based on fear. Do you get that? The only way you get anybody to do anything in that society is to scare them into obedience. He's like, oh, well, they made the wrong choice. Let's kill them. Who'd they say that to? Samuel. Who answers in verse 13? Saul. What's that? So they're together, and Saul is starting to pick up leadership and be respected. But Saul said, no one will be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel. Hey, there's hope for you, Saul. Good on you. You're not, and I have won my first battle. No, the Lord has done it. Then Samuel said to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal and there renew the kingship. Had he not already been established as king? And I think some time went on here. I don't know how much time, but they had somebody. Well, the 6 months in the story outside the scriptures is 6 months after they finished taking the right eye out of everybody else except the men that ran to Jabesh Gilead. So it's a minimum, you're right, a minimum of 6 months. But that war could have been going on 7 years. I don't know. And but my point is, there was some time there, so that they're like, okay, it's time to take this seriously. Look what the king did for us. What we always wanted a king for, to deliver us from our enemies. He rallied the troops, and we won, and we're happy. So now we're getting the king we wanted. And they're a little bit more supportive of Saul than they were the first time. So Samuel says, let's go to Gilgal and renew the kingship. So all the people went to Gilgal and made Saul king in the presence of the Lord. Well, I guess he's the first, second and third king of Israel, because they made him king again. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration. And then in chapter 12, we're going to see Samuel stepping out of the picture, at least he thinks. He's stepping down, but he's not going to step out of the picture. But he's handing the leadership over to Saul. It's 8 o'clock. I will share with you some really neat history next week that goes with this. Will you come back to hear that? Because I think, and remember, read through this chapter again before you come next week, because to understand some things about why they were there, how they got there, events that it is amazing how this stuff comes full circle. And God is doing so much more than just lifting up Saul. What he's doing is big. So, all right, it's 8 o'clock, 8:01. I don't want to carry you any longer. Any other comments, questions?
I just make a comment, if you can move that up a little bit.
No, I can't move it. That's a picture.
Next, on the right side, Mount Nebo.
Right there?
Yeah, these are,
Okay, well, that is right there. Let's see, Reuben, Mount Nebo's right here. That's that map bigger. So,
yeah, I know.
okay,
But these are, which is right there by Mount Nebo on the right.
right there.
That's where the army gathered, because they had to cross the Jordan, everybody from the different tribes.
Uh-huh.
And then down in the very bottom corner, that's Jabez. So what I'm trying to point out is, for them to arrive, to start the battle,
Yeah, there's,
they started the battle around 2 o'clock in the morning. They had to march from Gezer all the way down there across the Jabez.
it's up, I think it's up here is,
See Mount Nebo?
yeah, well, but Jabesh Gilead is up here, unless it moved. It's up here in the Manasseh area above Gad. So it's going to be up here. It's still a long hike.
I thought that, but that's my point, is just to be able to attack them at 2 o'clock in the morning.
They had to be hiking all night long.
And, you know, where did Saul, well, you know, where did Saul get the wisdom, the military wisdom to know how to divide them into 3 companies
Right.
and attack in the middle of the night? That just isn't the way you're supposed to do battles.
Right. And certainly they were not expecting it on the night before this town of 7,000 tired, defeated men said, yeah, we're submitting to you.
Think how tired the army was that marched to get there.
Yeah, and they probably left right after plowing their fields. I mean, when you think about that, they plowed their fields, they were called together, they hike around the Jordan, they meet together, and then divide into 3 and attack by sunup. It's rather amazing. Do you ever wonder if there are some other miracles not given to us in the Bible along the route? But anyway.
The other thing is, it's not just a long hike. Those are all hills. It's up and down, up and down. It's all very demanding physical.
All right, any other comments, questions, discussion? All right. We'll see y'all on Sunday.
Hardship can build a kingdom.
What's that?